and gentlemen, since Operation Ganga was set in motion, thousands of stranded students have been evacuated from strife-torn Ukraine and brought back to safety. The focus of the Modi government has been on the safe passage of all its nationals stuck in Ukraine. Intense diplomacy between Delhi and Moscow averted a bloodbath of Indian lives. The Russians, who were pounding Kharkiv, the same city where an Indian student had already lost his life, suddenly agreed to give the trapped students a window of opportunity to move out to 3 locations near the war-torn city. The Prime Minister, who's on a campaign trail in Uttar Pradesh today, interacted with some of the students, but not before last night. He spoke with President Putin of Russia, got a window where he could get Russia to agree to stop the attacks so that the Indians could be moved out. And today, when the Prime Minister interacted with these children coming out of Ukraine, he told them they're not alone. Listen in to the Prime Minister.
मैं कल्पना कर सकता हूं कि किस प्रकार की मानसिक परिस्थिति से आपको गुजरना पड़ा होगा। कठिनाइयों के बीच भी हम ठीक से अभी इवैक्यूएशन कर पा रहे हैं। मैं तो अभी भी मानता हूं कि अगर देश में पहले से मेडिकल एजुकेशन की नीतियां सही होती तो आप लोगों को बाहर नहीं जाना पड़ता। कौन माँ बाप चाहते कि इस छोटी उम्र में अकेले भेज दे? कोई माँ बाप नहीं चाहता। लेकिन अब लगे हैं, देखिए पहले करीब 300-400 के बीच में हमारे यहाँ मेडिकल कॉलेज थी, अब हम करीब 700 तक पहुंच गए हैं। हर जिले में मेडिकल कॉलेज कर रहे हैं। पहले हमारे देश में कोई 80-90 हजार के बीच में सीटें थी, अब पिछले 5 साल में हम इसको 1.5 लाख तक पहुंचा दिया है।
The opposition today was briefed on exactly what was being planned and how it was being executed. The plan, the execution and the success. Members of Parliament of all political parties were briefed by External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, and the meeting concluded on a unanimous note. The message was clear. India stands together when it comes to national interests. But the Congress did manage to find some faults. Rahul Gandhi raised the issue of China and Pakistan getting closer to Russia due to India's stand in the current crisis. Did he want India to vote against Russia? While the Congress approved of India's stand to abstain from voting at the UNGA, they raised questions on the delay in evacuation of Indians in Ukraine. Rahul Gandhi even gave ammunition to the BJP as these images were made public. The ruling party scoffing at the Congress MP for scrolling his phone while the consultative committee's meeting was on in Parliament. Some would say India is in a diplomatic dilemma with key strategic partners on both sides, but a balancing act is the position we are taking. India has made a strategic choice of a measured, nuanced position, one that many in the opposition also believe is the right choice to make. But the cherry picking unfortunately continues. So the legitimate question I want to ask tonight is, why fault diplomatic tightrope? That's the question and the debate coming up on the other side.
You're watching the News Hour at 9. Debate number 2 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
Joining me tonight, Gaurav Bhatia, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, Sanjay Jha, suspended Congress leader. But my first question goes to Kamru Choudhury, leader of the Congress party, joining me live from Kolkata. And Mr. Choudhury, I want to ask you, what did you want India to do at the UNGA? Vote against Russia and then ask Russia to stop the war and not shell in Kharkiv so that India can extricate the students in Kharkiv after we had already lost our own Naveen in the shootout out there. I want to ask you, what did you want India to do? To take a position against Russia and be completely on the American side when both India and Russia are equally important partners. What did you want India to do?
Well, Navika, thank you for asking this question in today's debate. The first point that I want to put out here, at least for once, for God's sake, for once, Modi government has fallen back on the time-tested policy of the Congress government during Nehru and Indira Gandhi's regime. That is, adhere to the non-aligned movement, not be a party to the American bloc or the Russian bloc. We all accept this, that at least chalo, der aaye, andher nahi. Now the point out here is that when Rajiv
Der
Gandhi...
aaye durust aaye, der hai andher nahi.
Yes, that's what the Modi...
आप मुहावरे मिक्स कर रहे हैं.
Well, Navika, let me just finish. Give me this minimum courtesy. Give me the minimum courtesy to finish it. I am not a Hindi pandit that I can go on. Okay,
sir.
Fine. You brought out a point where Rahul Gandhi was asking in the today's parliamentary meeting what he was supposed to be doing with a mobile phone. Well, when Rahul Gandhi raised the question, what is the question that every Indians wanted to ask to the government of the day today? That what will be the India stand if somehow or the other the China becomes another Russia and tries to attack our motherland? Then what will be the government stand on this? He did not ask anywhere else. He asked rightly to the External Affairs Minister, and rightly so he asked a question on behalf of millions of Indians. At least he was picking up the phone and looking, not nose picking in a public meeting. So don't try to pick up something that is absurd in your PR exercises that is all the ministers of the government is doing right now. International बेइज्जती करवा रहे इंडिया का मंत्री लोग बाहर में जाकर, and you say that okay, Rahul Gandhi was scrolling a mobile. Whatever questions Rahul Gandhi ji has asked as of now, Navika, you tell me which one did not create an issue in India later on, whether it be the corona, whether it be the economy, whether now with the Russia-Ukraine war, whether the evacuation of the citizens, whether on the Chinese aggression in the Ladakh region,
Rahul Gandhi,
unemployment issues,
Rahul Gandhi is the most pertinent politician who's raised the most pertinent questions.
I don't know why
the floor,
so
the floor is
about my Rahul Gandhi ji.
Sir,
I
am agreeing with you that he is the parliamentarian who's asked the most pertinent questions. You can't have a problem with my, agreeing with you. Mr. Choudhury, I'm agreeing with you. Most pertinent questions. When he says that, it's a duty, not a favor that the government is doing, it's absolutely right. When he says that Indians have been delayed in being brought back home, well, he's right. We should all say he's right. When you say that the mantris are there for a PR exercise, we should all say they're right. But you don't understand that in the diplomacy language, counselor, 1 minute. No, you can't.
Modi ji ka jai, you saw what happened. What happened when the mayor insulted our Kamru
Choudhury,
he is representing not
anchor को तो बोलने दीजिए सर. मैंने आपको पूरा समय दिया. Allow me to speak. I'm only saying one thing, that do you realize when a minister goes, the access at the diplomatic level that he gets is better than the access that India's representative at an official bureaucratic level will get? Do you realize that by sending these ministers, that access has been raised? Do you realize that when these ministers have gone, private airports have been opened up so that Indian Air Force flights can land there and quick clearances can be given? Do you realize that when these ministers are there, they can, actually not wait for any paper pushing and red tape, and they can take decisions on the spot on what help the Indian students who are coming would get? But if you do not know, then well, let Gaurav Bhatia explain that to you. And Mr. Gaurav Bhatia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Navika. Navika, first of all, it is now very evident that under the leadership of Shri Narendra Modi ji, the priority, and I would say the priority of the Indian government is to save every Indian's life who is stuck in Ukraine. And this is an extraordinary situation, and therefore this extraordinary effort by the government. To the opposition, especially to the Congress, it might seem like a PR exercise, but I must say that it is very evident that the government has taken it very seriously, and because of that, 6,200 Indians have been brought back. And there is another news that I wish to share. We are also hoping that in the next 2 days, 7,400 more Indians will come back. And this is a Herculean task, but the will and resolve of this government is even stronger. Now, coming to the point that you were making, I'll take it forward. See, Rahul Gandhi and Congress, these are perpetual pessimists. But apart from the reasons that you gave, I would say that the presence of the ministers is not a PR exercise. Rather, as you rightly said, it provides impetus and strength to the mission that is being carried out because their presence makes it more effective. Second, it provides succor to all these citizens who are looking for assurance. And I think it is a message to all the Indians that the government is standing with you. And third, a veteran like General V.K. Singh, he is a former army veteran. He himself knows a lot about evacuation. Imagine his experience and his knowledge is being utilized. Can somebody question that? I don't think so. Except the Congress, nobody can question that. And now coming to the diplomacy part, yes, it's true that if the policy has been good, this government will follow it, and governments come and go. But the policy has to remain the same if it helps the country. But where it has to change, like Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, Narendra Modi ji changed the policy to show China its rightful place and show the might of our country. This is the difference between a strong government that is headed by Narendra Modi ji and a policy paralysis government that the UPA was.
Well, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, all questions that have been relevant so far have been only asked by Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Please respond, to the criticism and add a few of your own criticisms of the government if you want to.
Good evening, Navika, and good evening to my fellow panelists. First of all, to my very good friend, Mr. Choudhury, for him to say that finally Narendra Modi is following the great Nehruvian principle of non-aligned policy. If Mr. Choudhury thinks that India actually did indeed follow the non-aligned policy and was non-aligned through decades, almost 60, 70 years, if he thinks that, then he is living in La La Land and he must be evacuated immediately. In fact, we should fund some crowdsourcing so we can actually hire a plane and airlift Mr. Choudhury from this La La Land. What is he talking about? Just two examples. Navika Mithrokin archives in the 1970s, including the ET report in 2017, said authoritatively that 1/3 of Indira Gandhi's cabinet was on the payroll of KGB. He must, I'm sure Mr. Choudhury respects, if not worships Dr. Ambedkar. He must go through with a fine-tooth comb his resignation speech, Dr. Ambedkar's of 1951, where he says India is so strongly aligned to China that is suicidal. It is leading to our ruination. Why is India, why is Nehru batting for China to get the United Nations Security Council seat? What is Mr. Choudhury talking about? For once, Navika, I must say this, that India has possibly realized that there are, leave alone, no permanent friends. There are no friends at all in today's world. We are on our own. And thank God, and here Mr. Choudhury would like me praising Indira Gandhi, and I praise Atal Bihari Vajpayee as well, that we are fiercely independent because we are a nuclear state. Things would have been very different from Ukraine, for Ukraine had it been a nuclear state. The tragedy in this world is that the world respects only power and strength. Then you can be peaceful. Now let me come to this really sad exhibition of one-upmanship that we are seeing, unfortunately, as far as evacuation is concerned. I must, in fact, I applaud the Congress because the Congress has sided with the government as far as the United Nations vote is concerned. The Congress has said it is good that the government abstained. Although personally, I don't like abstaining from anything because to be neutral is actually to take sides, but that's besides the matter. For example, I do understand that I as a citizen can criticize and say that India must not have any relations with Saudi Arabia or any dictatorship or barbaric regime. But India can't do that. It's not Anand. It is 1.3 billion people combined. Likewise, look at the hypocrisy of the West, Navika. China has done so much more worse than Russia, so much more. It is a currency manipulator. It is a dictatorship. It stifles free speech. It has concentration camps for Muslims.
Of
1.5
course.
million Muslims are interned.
Of course,
It is
there are
doing
different
all- it has
standards,
invaded us.
Dr. Anand Ranganathan. Of course, there are different standards for the world.
Yes.
They will do what suits them best, and that's exactly what Mr. Rahul Gandhi does. And Sanjay Jha, I want to ask you, today he's so worried about Russia getting close to China and Pakistan. When China was in Doklam, what was he doing with the Chinese at that point in time? You know, these questions will be asked today. He can sit there because he's a member of parliament, but when he was sitting and meeting with all of these people, did he not remember his own country and its own interests?
Well, Navika, as far as the issue of India's voting on the resolution condemning Russian invasion of Ukraine, it is very palpable to anyone who follows international politics that India's basic option has been to ensure that if tomorrow the Russia-China strategic alliance ropes in Pakistan, which is already in a very close proximity with China, that can become a very dangerous force for us to handle on our borders. And there is already enough speculation that if tomorrow China were to go and annex Taiwan, that will be like a quid pro quo for the Chinese support of Russia in the UNSC. It's a quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. And please remember that China is actually already thinking that Ukraine may be a sovereign, independent state and a member of the United Nations, but it treats Taiwan as just a principality, an extension of China. So they believe that will not even be an international violation of sorts. So I think that is the principal reason why probably India has taken what I would call as a soft stance, which basically says that I'm not going to be critical of Russia, although there is a footnote to say that we do not approve of the territorial sovereignty of a country being violated. So it's playing it safe for the moment, but I do believe Indian diplomacy will be tested sooner than later if ultimately there are going to be more deaths and destruction in Ukraine. And at some point, we will have to take a very categorical stance.
But the epitaph has already been written that this government has failed to anticipate the war. This government has failed to bring back the Indian students sooner than they have, So the epitaph has been written, Sanjay Jha and Kamru Choudhury. That's what I want to ask you. At a time when all of us should be standing together, you call it a PR exercise if ministers go. You call it as a delay tactic by the government. The government was sending out advisories on 15th of February when the war started on 24th, so 9 days notice. And the students have come back and given their own testimonies saying that their university said no war, continue with your classes. That's why they didn't take it seriously at that point in time. That's also the government's fault?
No.
Navika, has America, has
Navika,
the UK sent
Navika,
ministers?
the advisories that were first issued. No, first answer that I want to put out here, when the first advisory was put out, it was written out there specifically, you may, there was not a definite direction to the students studying in Ukraine. Second, they had their third year and fifth year exams, which had to be offline and compulsorily. There was a dilemma in the students' mind, what has to be done. Now, coming to the point of evacuation, India, this is not the first time that India has evacuated its residents from war-torn cities and countries. Even we have got a Citizenship Amendment Act also in place to get in Indian Hindus from other countries who have been religiously persecuted. Now, this is
supporting the CAA
policy that we have been
suddenly
following.
We are into
now,
the CAA. I don't know what's going on. Kamru Choudhury, I think आप इतना पढ़ के आए हैं कि आप कोर्स के बाहर का जवाब दे रहे हैं जो सवाल पूछा नहीं उसका भी जवाब दे रहे हैं. Well, I only want to ask one question to the Congress.
That was the hypocrisy that I want to expose of the government, the hypocrisy that the government is showing right now. When the Indians were evacuated from other countries right from long back ago, decades ago, there was no PR exercises.
Okay. Anand Ranganathan rebutting you. Anand Ranganathan, 30 seconds. I'm running out of time. 30 seconds, Anand.
No.
Mr. Choudhury, with due respect, when you're talking of earlier evacuations, it was not in the
agreement and the Quad.
Sir.
Yeah, make your point, Anand.
No, I was just about to slightly correct Mr. Choudhury, my good friend, that when he's talking about evacuation from Kuwait, Surely it was a fantastic achievement for India, but it was about many months before the war actually started. Mr. Choudhury, this is right in the middle of the war. And can you tell me how many senators has America sent, dispatched to Ukraine? How many MPs has UK sent? So,
absolutely.
Please don't criticize for criticism's
And the
sake.
fact is, in Kuwait, it took them 3 months to evacuate all the Indians from Kuwait. Well, sometimes facts tell the story, not necessarily the analysis that people want to do based on what's convenient to them. That's where we leave it. But many tonight are saying that it's a Herculean job that the government is doing. There will be stress, there will be some problems that these students will go through because, frankly, it's war zone. It's not tourism that's happening in Ukraine right now. But in the middle of the adversities, the government standing with every single Indian to bring back the last Indian stranded in Ukraine. And we must keep the faith and continue to pray that each one will return home. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining me on the debate. Taking